Hi, I'm Jonathan Ward.
I'm Sonia Jante.
And I'm Kimberly Lane, and together we're Unlocking Leadership. We're three experienced executive coaches with very different disciplines. In every episode, we take your question from a real client and provide key insights to address their challenges from our three different perspectives. It's a holistic approach to understanding challenges and opportunities. So let's get to it. Our question today is from Bill in Anaheim. I'm in a difficult place because I interact with two groups that don't get along. It's not their fault. The organization managed the change of their leaders very poorly. How can I stay neutral when it feels like there are fractions between colleagues? Sonia, how can we help Bill navigate this situation?
Well, Bill, my heart goes out to you because it's very, very challenging to feel that the colleagues you need to work with are not getting along. And yet you want them to be successful. You're part of the organization. So I want to share a little bit that I wrote a book called The Integrative Leader, which looks at the neuroscience of the way the brain works and our emotions work. So I want to give you a little bit of a foundation to that and then talk a little bit more about how to be Switzerland effectively. So basically, when people have had fights or when people have had unresolved conflict, it is our nature to try to figure out whether we're safe or not. And the part of the brain that looks at whether we're safe or not is the amygdala. It's back here at the base of the spine. And so we have certain coping mechanisms. We're either going to fight, we're going to flight, we're going to freeze, we're going to appease. Those are the things that we tend to do when we are afraid and we don't trust. And so the way to, if you will, snap out of that is to move to the frontal cortex, because up here is where you can actually expand and think clearly and connect the dots and things and see things in a bigger perspective. And so when you're up here, you are perceiving and engaging from a place of trust. So when we are in the amygdala, we tend to react very strongly to yes or no questions. And when we're up here, we can ask more of the expansive questions, more of the questions that allow for people to start engaging and discussing things. So one of the first things that I tell somebody who is supposed to play Switzerland is to make sure that you are listening and providing a forum for the people that you're interacting to have constructive conversations about the work. So you want to be able to lead to where a place where they can get to trusting that your interaction with them has everything to do with making sure that what is their responsibility or their needs are going to get met. And then should for any reason they decided they need to bring up the other party or the other situation, you might want to say, you know, I'm not part of their group. I only interact. I'm a service to in the organization. I work with you. You're my client. I work with them. They're my client. And so reposition and reframe for them what is your specific role so that they don't lump you in there, you know, the baby in with the bathwater kind of thing. So it's important to get and to be very measured about your tone and about your communication. Because what can happen is if we're feeling stress from somebody else, if we're highly empathic, we either may feel the need of, I'm going to calm you down, or I'm going to react to it. And you need to get to a place where you're very centered. And again, I'll go back to something that I always speak about, and that is, in order to create a good connection to somebody else, think of the space between you and them as, this is a field. And what am I doing to creating a unifying field? And in this particular case, you're unifying them by the fact that they can trust you and that you have their interests at heart and you're doing a really good job for them. And you're not focused on this over here. You're not the one that needs to be playing, how do we get everybody together? That's at another level that needs to be done with other people. But if there is no juice, no energy that they can extract from you to keep the fight going, then that's not the conversation you're going to have. You're going to have constructive conversations. So that's a good place to start. I'll turn it over to my good colleagues here. Any thoughts on
Yeah, I think, going back to trust, I was just thinking about the book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, and you start off with, if you're going to get to any kind of high level of performance, if you don't have that baseline level of trust, I mean, basically the bottom of the pyramid, you're not going to be able to get anywhere. And so, and also thinking about the aphorism that trust is easily broken and hard to build. And I think you have to be impeccable in your actions. You have to follow through with your word, follow through with what you need to do, what you said you're going to do. If something is going to get in your way, you've got to be honest and upfront about that. I'm thinking about the complexity of organizations. It's hard enough that we have in big companies, we have organizations that are naturally at conflict with each other. If you think about sales and production, there's always a tension between those two organizations. Sales is promising a lot of things that need to get done. Production says, we can't keep up with those orders possibly. But if you let either one of those two drive the ship, nothing's going to happen effectively. You have to find ways for them both to be successful, and that it's the creative solving of that tension that helps move the organization forward. And so I think I have to go back to the saying that your own success doesn't take away from somebody else's success. And especially when we have organizations that are extremely competitive or do forced ranking of people and things like that, you do feel like you're in competition with the rest of the organization. But I think it really helps us if we can step back and think about what's the bigger purpose behind what I'm doing here, and how can I be an effective player in that. There are people who play a role, what I like to call the corporate seed carrier, who go back and forth between organizations and plant seeds. This organization has a good idea. Let me take it to this other organization, and let me take something from that organization and plant it somewhere else. And then, you can act as a go-between in a lot of cases there, and help them come together.
Mm.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Jonathan, as you're sharing that scenario, but there's also those people that choose to be the catalyst that only enhance that dynamic that's going on between the two teams by feeding it with negative energy and negative commentary. And when you're present with one group, you feed into whatever they're saying about the other group, and likewise on the other end. So that's important, not to be that person. And I really like, Sonia, how you talked about really let's neutralize it. And I think really taking a deep breath, really thinking about and in being intentional about how you want to work with these two different groups, and set new ground rules. It literally set new ground rules. Say, we are not going to talk about whether this team and that leader and that leader and that team, and I know you say this and they say that, but in our meetings, we are not going to discuss that. This is a neutral ground. I won't tolerate it. We're here to complete a project, complete a task, be empathetic to others. And I'm going to begin with that by demonstrating it with each member here in this team. So creating that safe, trusting environment that Sonia alluded to, and do that with both groups, and just be firm on those ground rules. We're not going to be tit for tat. We have an objective here we have to meet. If anybody wants to, before we get started, have something to say about that and get it off your chest, we'll put it in the box, and I don't want to talk about it. We're here to do something very valuable for our organization and for our clients. And this is not contributing to our success. So really being assertive, even if you have to write it out in advance, but really coming clear about setting new ground rules and what you will and will not tolerate with regards to this blah, blah that's going on. On a secondarily part of that is, I have been in a situation where it gets toxic, and oh my gosh, I could not sleep. I was having nightmares, stomach aches, and migraines, and I couldn't get this monkey off my back. So just imagine that on both of these teams, there's individuals in there who are feeling exhausted over this, or feeling just physically sick because of the stress it's producing in that environment. And it becomes a flight risk for some really good employees, including yourself. So really good question, and something that really needs to be addressed quickly so that it does not elevate and escalate to really emotionally hurting a lot of people, and subsequently physically too. So great question.
I wanted to add something that I learned when I was at HP, and not that we had exactly this kind of a tension situation, but there was a leader that when he would see that people were just, entrenched in conflict and didn't want to move past anything, he would look at them and he would say, the enemy is out there. We, in order to be successful, for our stock price to go up, for our bonuses to happen, for our profit sharing to happen, we all need to get along. We all need to come up with a way to make the product better, the organization better, the services better. So let's keep that outside and let's do things in here that have to do with collaboration, which I think was a very, very smart approach. So he reset us very quickly. The other thing I want to point out, there was a long time ago, I was doing some coaching, ironically enough, at Taco Bell. And they had a very, their architect had designed some very interesting conference rooms for people to be able to sometimes experience being at one of the restaurants. But there was one room that was sacred. People only got to go there on certain special meetings. And I said, what's that room? And they said, well, we call it the Zen room. And I'm like, the Zen room? And so one day, for some reason, that was where the leader needed to meet with me. And I walked in, I went, totally get why it's a Zen room. I mean, everything about the colors in there, the way that it was furnished, the way the water flowed. And I thought, an instant calming center. So I often wonder, so if you had people that were in factions and that's where they had to meet, or you could create that kind of an environment, what's possible? Because we are so influenced by our environment. So something to think about.
I want to kind of piggyback on something that Kimberly said too, is that, you will have people who are just not going to get with the program. And if you're the new leader in that organization, I think, you have to have a one-on-one tough conversation with these people and just say, we can't have the backstabbing continue, the talking behind people's backs, and failure to deal with toxic people is one of the biggest derailers for managers and leaders in an organization. And so that's something you really need to be watching, is the mood of the group, because if you have one person like that, they can easily poison an entire
the
team.
virus spreads. Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah. Too quickly. Yeah.
What else?
Yeah, no, it's
a tough situation.
Our
heart goes out to Bill, wish
Yeah.
him the best.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Bill, from Anaheim, for your question today. We really hope that you and our viewers and listeners have gained some pointers for providing neutrality with colleagues. To our listeners, if you like the content we shared with you today, please like this episode and also share and subscribe on our YouTube channel, Unlocking Leadership, AskTheCoaches.com. We look forward to reading your reviews. You can also find Unlocking Leadership Ask the Coaches on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. If you have a leadership question or would like to reach out to our coaches, please email us at info@unlockingleadership-askthecoaches.com. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us today, and tune in next time for the keys to unlocking your best leadership.